family members in the Hollywood of the East, Clearwater, Florida. And now he's willing to share all that accumulated knowledge and expertise since 2021 with you, his favorite listeners, in just 1 short hour. Becoming an actor with David Sarcusa will help you learn all of the things that David wished he knew before he stepped onto his first set as an actor.
Tune in Saturdays from 3 to 5 p.m. for Miss Sarah's Dynamic Gospel Power Show. That's 2 hours of great gospel music every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. All brought to you by the Ozona Pig Restaurant in Ozona. Yes, that's every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. It's Miss Sarah's Dynamic Gospel Power Show. Tune in on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, this is Paul Malloy, host of Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show. I hope you'll join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, where we strive to bring you the libertarian perspective on political events of the day. There's no show quite like Freedom Works, with in-depth interviews, our ultimate top 10 list, and so much more. So join us for Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, this is Patsy with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. At the bottom of the hour, I will be talking to Jean-Pierre Isbouts about his wonderful book called The Fractured Kingdom. You must stay tuned for that because that is a wonderful book. And I am going to be talking right now to somebody who I'm so happy to welcome back to Joy on Paper. Lee Goldberg is, well, what can I say about him? He is just terrific. And his new book called Malibu Burning is book 1 in his Sharp and Walker series. Hi, Lee. How are you?
I'm just great. It's good to be back.
Do you know what I love about your writing?
That it's beautiful, transports you to another world, and keeps you awake at night. Exactly.
And I love everything about your writing. You are so good. You are just, every time I get to one of your books, I think to myself, how can he be so good? You get everything right. You create the atmosphere, you create the characters, you create the events, everything just, I don't know. I think you're amazing.
May I get what you just said transcribed and notarized for my publisher and my wife? It would come in very, very handy.
Okay, I would be happy to do that. I will put that on my website too, because I think you are just, I get so many books. And I tell you, when I get a book that really does take me, does transport me somewhere, and I so enjoy, normally I have sort of an antipathy to Los Angeles, Hollywood. I was there for a while, so I went through a little bit of some bad things. But when the two authors, Sue Grafton, who used to do this for me too, transport me there to, Southern California, and then you in such a way that it takes my breath away.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry if my book gave you PTSD. Actually, Sue she passed away, of course, but she was an old friend of mine. We were both named Kentucky Colonels, and we spent a lot of time together on the road. She was a great author. I'm thrilled to be mentioned in the same breath as her.
She was, and it was always so wonderful when I had her on the program because we had a lot of things in common. She was sort of working in Hollywood at the same time I was, and also she worked when she was young. She worked in a laboratory, so we had this we can talk this language. And when in one of her books, she writes, describes a sweater as urine colored. Well, for me, I mean, I did so many urine samples. I love that description. I was thinking, I told her, I said, what do you think people thought when you wrote that? Did your editor say, that's a weird description?
Well, she divided her time between Santa Barbara and Kentucky. And one year we were both honored as Kentucky colonels. So we flew to Kentucky and the governor bestowed us with this honor. And as he was reading off his speech about Sue, she leaned over and whispered to me, this is the second time they've given me this damn thing. You'd think they'd keep records. And then when it was time for her to accept it, she went, oh, what an honor and a thrill as a native Kentuckian to win this award. But she already had one on her mantelpiece. And for me, I went up and said, I think you made a grave mistake. I've never rescued any cats from a tree or done anything heroic, or I'm not from Kentucky. Are you sure you don't have me confused with somebody else? But, we both have our Kentucky Colonel certificates, and afterwards she and I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken to see if the certificates would get us anything, an extra wing or a drumstick. Nothing. Nothing.
Well, to be together, just thinking about your writing, both of you have this wonderful ability to really draw in the reader. And the new one, wow, I was so enthralled. I was thinking to myself, oh, this is so good. That's part of the problem of reading your books. As you're reading, you get involved in it, and then after every once in a while, you'll take a breath and you'll say, oh, this is so good. How can it be?
Oh, that sounds like a serious problem. I'm going to do something to fix that. Yeah. That's horrifying.
It is just... So, what are you going to tell us about this news? It is so good. It just, I don't know. I love Walker. I love the whole thing. Where do you want to start?
Well, the book is about two arson investigators looking into the biggest wildfire in California history as it's unfolding, and they begin to suspect it's more than it appears. And the book is also the story of this brilliant, suave, adventurous con man thief who has set this wildfire to pull off the most audacious heist, perhaps, in history. And it's dual storylines that eventually converge in an explosive way. And it's my attempt to do both a police procedural, but also a big, fun heist novel. Because if I'm known for anything, I'm known for both those kinds of stories. I've been doing a successful series of police procedurals featuring a detective named Eve Roden, and I also wrote 5 international bestsellers with Janet Ivanovich about a con man thief. And I just want to blend those two into one jam-packed book, which it sounds like I achieved. You're out of breath and you're exhilarated, and I like that.
Well, tell us. I just right away I got to U.S. Marshal Andrew Walker, and he's expecting something.
Well, Andrew Walker is a ex-U.S. Marshal who has been ordered by his pregnant wife to settle down a bit. So he leaves the Marshal Service and becomes an arson investigator, thinking it'll be pretty much a desk job or sifting through ashes. Unfortunately, it doesn't turn out that way for him. And he doesn't want to let his wife know that he's putting himself in danger. So he downplays what he's going through. But he's also a guy who wishes he was still a U.S. Marshal, who made this sacrifice so he could save his marriage and be a better father when his child is born.
Well, I always like that when we're going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby. that always makes it fun.
Yes, that does change your life a little bit.
Exactly. So it makes the character really. You know that his mind is working on several levels at the same time, because when you're expecting a baby, you have one mindset, and then what he has to do, his job is wow.
Well, so many of these heroes in crime novels are loners or middle-aged men who don't have family lives, and I wanted to go against that.
And they drink, and that's why this is so much fun, that we have Walker, who we really care about, and we care about what the baby. We want Walker to be okay.
Yes, I don't like all these crime fiction heroes who have all these addictions, whether it's alcoholism or sex or gambling or what have you, and they're haunted by a deep, dark past. Their whole family was murdered by a serial killer or something. I like to have relatable protagonists who are more like the reader than different from the reader, so that it's easy for readers to invest themselves in these characters because they're like them, except they carry guns and badges.
Exactly. And you create this. It must be so exciting for you when you have a character that really takes on a life, in many ways, a life of his own, because he really pops out of the pages.
Well, it makes it easier to write when they take on a life of their own. And it's sort of like I'm channeling their voice or transcribing what they're saying instead of making the stuff up. And that's why I know a book is working, when a character does seem to come alive, for me, as well as I hope for the reader. But if it comes alive for me and the character seems fresh and fun, entertaining to me, I hope the same will be true for the people who pick up the book.
Well, it is. And one of the wonderful things about your writing, because, it's a serious subject and there's always a crime, and that's a serious subject. But you just can throw in humor so that as we're reading, there are times where we get a smile on our face.
Well, I don't believe these books that are unremittingly dark and don't have any humor. To me, that pulls me out because life has humor in it. In my own life, the saddest, most tragic moments have always had some element of humor. So I think humor is essential in a book. Not only that, I think humor humanizes the characters. It allows us to invest in them. And when I say humor, I don't mean telling jokes. I don't mean one-liners. I mean the kind of humor that comes from characters in conflict and characters in unusual situations that comes from who they are and how they're approaching the obstacles in front of them. It's not banter. It's not stand-up comedy. It's what I hope is natural humor that doesn't draw attention to itself and stop the story cold or kill the suspense. I hope it actually augments the suspense. So I think humor is as important as any other element in a novel. I mean, even non-crime novels. You look at John Irving and Larry McMurtry, they have a ton of humor in their powerful and very emotional stories.
And of course, that comes also through in your television writing. That's why I think one of the reasons that the book reads so well is you have this television, part of you where dialogue is important and where you throw in humor because you've done, I don't know how many Monk mysteries and Diagnosis Murder, and all of them, you had the mystery, but you always had humor, which really, that's why you can watch the reruns of Monk a dozen times, and there's always like something fresh in there.
Well, in the case of Monk, that could easily become Inspector Clouseau or Get Smart. And what made Monk work, in my view, is that we humanized him, that each story arose from the conflict in his life and the essential tragedy in his life, the death of his wife and his obsessive-compulsive disorder. So while you laughed with him, you weren't laughing at him. He was a fully fleshed-out, believable, full-bodied character as opposed to Maxwell Smart or Inspector Clouseau. And again, I mean, when I was doing Diagnosis Murder, obviously if you have Dick Van Dyke in the show, you've got to have some humor as well as some song and dance. But the challenge of television is you have to tell a story entirely through dialogue and action. If you don't hear it and you don't see it, it doesn't exist. Whereas a book, you have a lot of other crutches to lean on to tell a story. But in television, show, don't tell. You got to be able to visualize it. You got to be able to hear it. You don't get inside people's heads. You have to see who they are by what they do and what they say. So
the idea for this series, now it's going to be a series, right?
Yes, the sequel's already done. Available for pre-order now. It's called Ashes Never Lie, and that one will be out in September.
Ah, okay. So that, in when? Next year?
September of 2024. Yeah, Malibu Burning is out now, and the sequel will be out a year from now.
Oh, good. Okay, because who knows? Sometimes I don't know what month it is anymore. Can you believe it's 2023? It's 2023, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Because I had an editor from Nat Geo on, and she was promoting a book called Weird But Wonderful Things for 2024. And I'm thinking, it's going to be 2024? So when did you start this? Did you start this new series during the pandemic?
Yes, I wrote it. Actually, I think I wrote it before the pandemic. This book was delayed, and for reasons beyond my control. And that's why I'm in this unique situation of having 3 books coming out within 8 weeks of each other. I have Malibu Burning, which is out right now and doing extremely well. And I have a book coming out in November called Calico. And I have another book in January coming out called Dreamtown. And it wasn't meant to be that way. They were written, in some cases, a year apart. But the vagaries of publishing pushed them all into one narrow time frame, which is just surprising for me. So it's like I have to remember, oh yeah, Malibu Burning. What was that about again? I wrote it so long ago, and I've already written the sequel, and I'm already about to start writing the 3rd book in that series. So the book is new for you and new for readers, but it's old for me. It's like I got to dig back and remember Malibu Burning. What was the plot of that again?
Wow, that means I'm going to get to talk to you every 4 months.
Yes. My wife will think we're having an affair.
Oh, that's nice. We should get some gossip going. That'll help my ratings.
Yeah, I'll tell my wife I'm having an affair with someone on the East Coast who's wearing a urine-colored sweater.
That's it. That makes Sue happy. And add that it's Patsy with a Z, and Jimmy Hoffa named her. So I just couldn't resist her. How about
there
that?
There you go.
So, with all of this, I know, you're award winning and you've gotten all these prizes and stuff and you're so famous, but do you still do you still go back and read literature? What literature, great, I'm talking about the past, still influences you?
Oh, Larry McMurtry. My favorite book of all time is Lonesome Dove. And I also love John Irving. I mentioned both authors earlier.
Yeah.
And I've been reading other books lately by Jonathan Evison and Anthony Doerr and Ian McElwain. I am a voracious reader. I read in all genres except perhaps science fiction. I don't read a lot of science fiction. But I'm influenced very much by good books I read and bad books. I mean, you can learn a lot from a terrible book. You ask yourself, why did this book not work for me? Where did it fail? How do I avoid making the same mistakes? And I learn an enormous amount from reading great books. If they move me, they scare me, they touch me. I go back and I try to figure out, what did the author do? How did they use words to evoke this emotion in me? And how can I do the same thing?
Now, for you, you've won so many things over the years. You've been so acclaimed. And of course, the 2 times that you won the Edgar Award and you became a New York Times bestselling author. When you look back, so which came first, the sort of television career or the acclaim or the novel writing career?
Well, I think what really set my career going was the time I won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh.
That really opened up so many doors for me. Books and TV shows. I think if it wasn't for winning the Nobel at 18, I don't know if I'd have the career that I have now. The prizes, I didn't actually win the Edgar. I was nominated twice for the Edgar Award. I don't think prizes mean all that much. I don't think that that's really impacted my career. I sold my first novel, joking aside, when I was 18 years old, and it was a big bestseller. I did it under a pseudonym. It was a men's action adventure novel, and that book sold to the movies. And my TV and novel careers have been running great ever since. So I can't complain. I'm the luckiest SOB I know.
Well, the luckiest and most talented SOB, because you are really, it's just when I think in these times, there's troubled times, there's, so much going on in the world and so much that you don't actually want to think about, that to get a book like this, which takes us into characters, as I said, when you really care about the characters and you start thinking about a location, it puts you in a different frame of mind because sometimes the news and everything else going around is too much. This is just the perfect read. It really is.
Well, thank you so much. That's what I set out to do. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not trying to get across any political point or anything. All I'm trying to do with my books is entertain, to take you away from your troubles and the stress in your life. I mean, I get so many emails and letters from people who say, "Oh, my wife was going through chemotherapy, or I had this other tragedy, and reading your book just got me away from all that. It allowed me some laughter for a while, and or some excitement, and that is the best praise I can get. It means more to me than that Nobel Peace Prize that I got." Yeah,
well, it is. It is an important thing that you're doing because we need writers like you. We need to have this. I think one of the things about your writing, when people read it, they think, wow, I like this person. I want to know more about his writing. I want to read more of the books. So that people, the wonderful thing about the internet is that people now can go back and find your other books. And I think you have a lot of them.
40.
Oh my goodness. So that's about your age, right? 40. So
well, I try to write at least 2 books a year, but there was a period when I was writing 3 or 4 books a year. So I've slowed down a little bit, but I'm always writing. I love to write, and I have an expensive family.
And I'm sure that they are so thrilled with you because you have everything going for you, not just the wonderful talent, but the wonderful personality. And
now, if only I wasn't morbidly obese, then I'd really have everything going for me.
Oh, you're delightful. I'm really looking forward to. So the next one coming out is what?
Calico comes out in November.
Okay.
It's a dual timeline thriller. It's a modern day police procedural and a Western set in 1883 that share the same dead body. I
love dual time books. I love that. Oh, I'm going to, boy, I'm looking forward to that one. You're going to be back on in November, so we can talk about that. And I know that Malibu Burning is doing very well, and it deserves to because it really will bring a lot of joy to people. Just to have this book to now find a whole new characters to get involved in and to have it fill our mind. So Lee Goldberg, I think you're fantastic. I think you're just sometimes a book comes along just at the right time for people. And you're right. I'm sure that now, fans really, they look forward to your books.
I hope so. I got a mortgage I got to pay.
Oh, you're cute. So when you have a website that people can go to, right?
Yes, it's very complicated. It's leegoldberg.com. I'm also Lee Goldberg on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere.
Do you like to engage with the fans?
Yes. So I've had to get some restraining orders.
Okay. So everybody, you should be a fan of Lee Goldberg because he is a wonderful writer, a fun writer. And again, Lee, thank you so much for being on Joy on Paper today. I really want to tell you that when I got your book, I was so thrilled. And I'm looking forward to the new ones, and you will be back on Joy on Paper and say hello to your wife. And I'm sorry that, I'm madly in love with you, but
After this interview, I'm rushing out to buy her a urine-colored sweater. Oh. I can't get that out of my mind now.
Okay, good idea. Lee Goldberg, you are fantastic. The name of the book is Malibu Burning. The cover is really stunning. And everybody get this book, and it's going to be a hot weekend in most places, and it's a good time to sit back and in the air conditioning or under a tree and read Malibu Burning. Okay?
Yep. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I'll talk to you in a few months, okay?
All righty.
Okay. Bye-bye now. Bye, Lee. Wow. What a book. He's just so good. I like a book where I will actually smile once in a while, more than once in a while in Lee's case. All right, we're going to have some commercials, and then I'm going to be back with a really important book.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Have you ever faced disaster? The Red Cross is always there for you. The Red Cross responds to a call for help every 8 seconds. They have never turned anyone down. Now they need your financial support so that they can be ready to help you when the need arises. Donate online at redcross.org. Thank you.
Are you an author, an artist, an inventor? Then you need to protect your valuable intellectual property. You need Larson & Larson. We have the experience and knowledge to help you with all of your legal needs, from processing trademark, copyright, or patent applications to negotiating licensing agreements and handling litigation. The attorneys at Larson & Larson in Largo, Florida can help protect you. Call us today for a no-cost consultation at 727-546-0660 or visit our website at larsonpatentlaw.com.
Do you dread being called on to speak at meetings or family functions? Have you envied those who can sway an audience with well-chosen words? Do you know that people who speak well earn more money, earn more rewarding careers? Gain the confidence to master any speaking situation. Toastmasters will allow you to find your voice. Go to toastmasters.org to locate the club nearest you.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, this is Patsy with a Z, and I am back with my next guest. And the name of his book is The Fractured Kingdom, Uniting Modern Christianity Through the Historical Jesus. I'm so happy to welcome Jean-Pierre Isbots back to Joy on Paper.
Hello, Patsy. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's 8:30. It's a glorious morning here in Santa Monica, California.
Wow. I was so taken with this book. At parts of when I was reading it, I actually started crying because I thought, this is your mind. People talk about a beautiful mind. Your mind must be so filled with not only so much knowledge, but so much beauty, because you've traveled and studied and taken photographs of Israel. You've walked, and your best-selling book, In the Steps of Jesus. Your mind must be so full of just joyful images.
Well, it's my lifelong passion to explore and to recreate the life and times of Jesus. It's something that I've been obsessed with all my life, and I was so fortunate to write this book for National Geographic called In the Footsteps of Jesus. We became a bestseller in 6 weeks. And now I wanted to follow that up with The Fractured Kingdom, because, we're so divided in the Christianity. We're just all on opposite poles of the spectrum. And I wanted to write a book that brings us together again and says, look, what are we ultimately about as Christians? We're trying to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. And what does that mean exactly? So that's what I try to do in a book that I hope is very accessible. It's an easy read. It's not scholarly. But hopefully it'll be a source of inspiration for our readers.
Well, I think it will be. And as I said, there's something about, first of all, you do write beautifully. It is just it's so easy to read. You make everything flow. The entire story just flows. And of course, one of the things with a complicated subject like this that people might not know some of the areas, you put the glossary right in the front of the book to remind people. Now, so many people, of course, you read the Bible, you've heard of all of the names and the words are familiar, but you put everything in context. And one of the things that I think it's so important that people realize that you're going to talk about the kingdom. But when I was reading it and I got to the part where people were, you're talking about, was Jesus educated? And so often people don't realize that, of course, he was a Jewish boy. He would be educated. He would have studied, because that's what Jewish boys have done forever. And it doesn't matter where they are. Somehow Jewish boys always find a way to study. And that's part of the sort of whole world of being a Jewish family. So I was so happy that you brought that out, and you'll explain that in a minute. And for me, in the footsteps of Jesus is on I have a coffee table, which is only Nat Geo books, because Nat Geo has made a big difference in my life. That is a center book, and I pick it up often. One of the reasons is I lived and worked in Israel, and I lived and worked in Lower Galilee.
Wow.
So I picked a lot of olives in my life, millions of olives in my life. So I really, I appreciate the discussion you have in here of the Galilee. And so let's start with that. Explain where this is and why it's different from other parts of Israel that people might know about.
Well, Galilee is a beautiful, beautiful area. I was there just last year again, filming a TV series called Searching for the Historical Jesus for the Great Courses, and it's so beautiful. And I got to give credit to the government of Israel that they have really kept Galilee the way it's been for centuries. There are no high-rises allowed. There's no development allowed. So you really can walk along the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, around Tapka and Capernaum, and really imagine yourself in the days of Jesus. It's so incredibly inspirational. And for the story in the book, I make a point that that Galilee was always very different from Judea. These were two very separate areas. They were temporarily combined in the time of King Herod the Great, but then especially during the rule of Herod the Great, a very difficult and punitive tax regimen was imposed on the farmers of Galilee, because King Herod wanted to make a lot of money to build, his fortresses and his cities and places like Masada. And he did that by literally exploiting the farmers of Galilee with a ruinous tax regimen that basically drove them off their land. And so the world of Jesus is actually the world of a great socioeconomic crisis. A lot of people lost their land because of these taxes. And these are the people who come to listen to the Sermon on the Mount. And that's why Jesus says, happy are you who are hungry now, because you are filled. He knows that. He knows that all these people have lost their land, lost their homes, cannot feed their children. And that is exactly the audience that Jesus talks to. And I think that's why he developed this idea of the kingdom of God.
And the parallel, of course, with today, with our farmers losing their land, our farmers being displaced, and conglomerates or the government taking over vast swaths of land. I think that will also touch people's heart when they read about it.
I absolutely. And there's so many parallels between the life of Jesus and the times in which he lived and what we are going through right now, the health crisis of the pandemic. Well, as we all know, Jesus was a healer. He worked in a time of a tremendous health crisis. The gap between rich and poor is so incredibly large in our time. It's same in his time. So that's what I try to do in the book, the Fractured Kingdom, is to show the incredible parallels between his time and our time, and why there's so much that resonates with us if only we're prepared to see it.
So we're talking about the kingdom of God, or sometimes it's referred to as the kingdom of heaven. And when you started off writing this book, you decided to use a prayer that cuts across all the lines of Christianity.
That's right. I think, and Mark and both Matthew write about the kingdom that is fractured cannot be a kingdom. And so that sort of struck me, and that's why we called it the Fractured Kingdom, because what Jesus tried to formulate with the kingdom of God, which is something that is at the core of his teachings, the very foundation of his teachings, is this idea of the kingdom of God, which is a new society, a society based on social compassion, social justice, and faith in God. These are the three pillars of the Torah, and as you very rightly said, Jesus was raised as a Jewish boy. So he knew the Torah, and he knew the great three fundamentals of we have to take care of each other, we have to strive for social justice, and we have to have faith in God. Those are the three pillars of the kingdom of God. And time again, he says, let's build that kingdom. In the prayer that we pray every Sunday, and the second half of the book is really devoted to analyzing that prayer, the Our Father, of course. It says, the second verse is, your kingdom come, which is an appeal to us to set aside our differences and these crazy culture wars, to come together and together build the kingdom of God, a kingdom in which is based on love and compassion for one another, regardless of what background we are at, whether we're black or brown or white, or whether we're straight or gay. It doesn't really matter. We need to come together as a society of Christians, and build a better society, build a better world for ourselves.
So going back a little bit, let's talk about Herod and this idea of taxing until you actually destroy a people.
Absolutely. Herod was under great pressure because he was not a Jew. He was an Arab, came from Idumea in the south, which is now Negev, the Negev desert. And he had no interest in Judaism as such. The Romans installed him as the king of this greater kingdom, which included Galilee and Judea and Samaria and Perea. And he was under pressure to do what Augustus wanted him to do, which is to build these great cities, these Greco-Roman cities, such as, for example, Caesarea. Sure, since you spent time in Israel, you've been to Caesarea, you've seen that beautiful aqueduct that is still standing there. But to build these cities, you gotta have money, and so he really exploited Galilee as a colonial possession. He exploited it by imposing these ruinous taxes, which is somewhere between 40 to 42% of the harvest, which of course makes it impossible for the farmer to survive and to feed his family and to have enough seed for the next crop. And what these farmers did is they started to borrow. And the only people with the capital from whom they could borrow are the tax collectors, which is why the tax collectors have such a bad name in the gospel. The people that you went to for a loan, and of course, when you could no longer pay your loan, your land was foreclosed upon. So it all fits. You just have to read between the lines of the Gospels, and you see tremendous socioeconomic crisis that ruled over Galilee, and which really, I think, informed to a great extent Jesus' ministry.
Well, when I was reading it, what I found fascinating as it was, of course, we talked about educating Jewish boys and nowadays girls, but that Jesus was educated. And of course, in the Bible, he's called a rabbi. And you pointed out very carefully and clearly how he could have become a rabbi, not going to Jerusalem.
That's right. The way to become a rabbi in ancient times was twofold. Either you could go to a yeshiva, an academy, but they were all in Judea. They were not in Galilee. Or you could be privately tutored. That was also a way to become a rabbi. And since when Jesus was just about 12 years old, the ruler of Galilee, the son of King Herod, Antipas, decided to build a city which you can still visit to this day. It's called Zephyrhills. And I always encourage people who go to Israel to visit it. It's not usually on the itinerary of church tours of Israel. But Zephyrhills was a new city built from scratch. And guess what? It's only like 3 or 4 miles from Nazareth. And typically what happens when you build a city like that in ancient times, you would co-opt, forcibly recruit people in the immediate area to build it. Now, Joseph, as we know from the Gospel of Mark, was a tekton, which is a skilled worker. It's not really a carpenter, it's a skilled worker. So obviously, Joseph would have been immediately scooped up to build that city of Zephyrhills, and his son Jesus would have obviously been following in his footsteps. He would have been working there as well. And since there were so many Pharisees in Zephyrhills at the time, my theory is that Jesus was actually tutored by Pharisees in the city of Zephyrhills, which is why right in the late 20s, he was recognized already as a rabbi when he went to the camp of John the Baptist. There is simply no other way to explain how Jesus could acquire such a large knowledge of the Torah that he would be recognized as a rabbi. And I find that fascinating. I would encourage anyone who goes to Israel in the coming years to put that on your itinerary as Zephyrhills or Zippori, it's called in Hebrew.
And everybody now knows the word Sephora because of the makeup and all the products. So it's something that definitely, one of the things that's going to happen at some point, they're going to dig up something and find more. Isn't it wonderful? Some of the recent discoveries in Israel.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to hasten to add that the one thing that really got me very excited, and in fact, I was there when they were excavating the area, and the lead archaeologist was very kind to take me there and to show me what they have found, which was almost intact synagogue on the shores of Galilee in Magdala, the place where Mary Magdalene came from. And what's so interesting is that now there are synagogues in Galilee, but they all date from the 3rd or 4th century. This synagogue dates from the time of Jesus, because underneath the floor, they found a coin minted in 29 AD, which is just the time when Jesus starts to begin his ministry. So this is a clear indication that not only were there synagogues in the time of Jesus, but the synagogue typically had a school, a Beit Midrash, and it's in those schools that young boys were taught scripture. So here is clear proof that in the time of Jesus, there were schools where young boys could be taught.
Well, I'm sure as they do more digging, they will find. I cannot believe that there were not synagogues in the Galilee, because, I come from northern Michigan, a copper country, where, in the middle of nowhere. And we had a synagogue. And although we didn't have a full-time rabbi, the rabbis would come up from Chicago, and we would have, the boys would learn from their fathers or their grandfathers or the Gabbai. They would learn how to read Hebrew, and they would study. So I can't believe that in the Galilee, they didn't have synagogues. They had, I'm sure, we will eventually find quite a few synagogues there, because that's what we do.
That's right. Absolutely. I sure hope so. And they keep digging. It's only about 15 or 20% of Israel has been excavated, and there is still so much that hopefully we will discover in the near future. I can't wait. I'm definitely sure that lots more exciting things will come, not only from Galilee, but also from Jerusalem, where they're still furiously digging away at this time.
Well, the important thing, first of all, it's, there was a time where I remember maybe 30, 40 years ago, they're saying, Jesus wasn't even real. Who was he? There were, this all made up stories. And, so that there's a historical record that, it's real, and that we can follow it and in the footsteps as you have done. It's so exciting. The things that we're learning it's just amazing. And I love to think of Jesus as a rabbi, because his knowledge and his ability to go up against the Sanhedrin and just be able to talk proves that he was educated.
Absolutely. He knew so much about Pharisee customs, which sort of supports my theory that he may have been educated by Pharisees, because he knows so much about them, and he's able to engage them in debate. Now, sometimes the evangelists take that in a pejorative sense. They say, well, the Pharisees were against this. I don't think that's quite true. What happened is that the Pharisees, and later in the rabbinic Judaism, that tradition continued, were always engaged in heavy discussion with one another. And those discussions would sometimes get quite intense. And so when the evangelists see Jesus in a very intense and fiery debate with the Pharisees, they think they are his opposition. No, they talked to him because they thought his ideas had merit. They may not always agree with what he had to say, but they really were very intrigued by his words. And let's not face it, it was a Pharisee, Joseph of Arimathea, who ultimately gave a tomb, his own tomb, to Jesus to be buried in. So I think there was great sympathy between the Pharisees and Jesus. They did not always agree with one another, but they were certainly, so to say, in the same camp, as it were, against the Sadducees, and they were in an entirely different group altogether.
Well, it's, the joke is always, if you have 10 Jews in a room, you're going to have 100 ideas. So they argue, they still argue today. You can get a group together and they can argue for days about one passage of the Torah, for example, which is part of the joy of what you're doing, you're studying, and what you're bringing out to people, this understanding of the how things worked in those days. And this is why this book is, I think this book is such an important, it's not a big book. I want to tell people it's not one of these big, heavy scholarly books, although you're capable of writing those too. But this one is written, I think, with a kind of simple joy of wanting to share and get people to understand Jesus, get people to understand what he was trying to tell people about getting together. And just, if we could all just grasp this and stop all this infighting and all this ugliness that is going around in the world, we would all be in a much better place.
Oh, it's so well put. But see, Patsy, that's exactly why I wrote the book. I wanted to write a book that brings us together. The fractured kingdom, that's what it's about. Our kingdom is fractured. But there were ways for us to come together and just to go back to the very, very things that Jesus talked about. That's all I'm saying. All we have to do, go back and understand why he said the things he did, the times he lived in, challenges he faced, and why his words are so important to us today. That's really the purpose of the book. And, of course, then the Our Father, why the Our Father is so incredibly important as the foundational thought of his very visions. So I hope that people will will read The Fractured Kingdom and sort of feel themselves a little bit better, better part of this great Christian community that we all enjoy in this country.
Well, I wish more people, I think one of the great things about going to church is that you did hear Our Father. You did hear it, and you did participate, and you did say it. And just by saying it, hearing it, it does get into your heart. And I hope that anybody who gets this book, they will say, I want, even in their families, get together and just hold hands and say this beautiful prayer that it brings tears to my eyes when I think of people over the centuries who have said this prayer and that it has touched their heart. So I think part of this book is encouraging people to take a look at this wonderful prayer and to just become better people.
Absolutely. It's so filled with so many beautiful verses, and and I give the original Aramaic, and then I give the Greek, and then I try to explain what each verse really means. But even in English, it is a beautiful.
It is.
Beautiful.
And the way the book is laid out, as I said, the glossary is in the front, so people can be reminded of the subjects that they're going to be reading about. And then you have the prayer and you have the text, and it is beautifully written. It is a delightful book. Everybody, you should get this book for yourself, and get one, get two, get a dozen, and give them to your friends. Give them to people who need to start thinking about the parallels between today and all of those years ago, and that the ideas of just being good, being better to each other, the fractured kingdom, uniting modern Christianity through the historical Jesus, is a beautiful book, a wonderful book. I just want to tell you, I admire you so much. I think you're so great. And it really brings tears to my eyes, because I think you've done a beautiful job with this book. And I actually would love for you to come back, because I have a little bit of a connection to the Netherlands and to just to some of your other writing. I'd like you to come back, and perhaps you could talk to us about your Van Gogh book. How about that?
Patsy, that would be my pleasure. It would be wonderful. I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, everybody, this book is available. Is there a website people should go to?
Well, it's available on Amazon.
It's available everywhere. It's a Nat Geo book. And when it's a Nat Geo book, it's great. Anyway, thank you again so much for being on Joy on Paper. Jean, you are just... You're somebody very special, and I envy that mind of yours. It's brilliant.
Thank you so much, Patsy. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, I'll talk to you again soon. I'm going to send you some open dates, and you'll be back, okay?
Sounds good, Patsy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. Okay, well, I could talk to him for a whole day, hours and hours. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. The Fractured Kingdom. I'm telling you, if you really have somebody in your life that you say, I want them to find this joy on paper, give them this book. This is a wonderful book. It's just beautiful. Again, I'm out of time. It's really been a very busy day, but I want to just remind everybody of what I always tell you. One of the joys of life is to see your words on paper, or to hear them spoken in an audible book. Or if you're very, very lucky, to hear those magic words, lights, camera, action, and your book will be turned into a major motion picture, streaming video, or perhaps a series on the Hallmark Channel. You don't know, and you won't know unless you start writing. And meanwhile, say something nice to somebody today. I will say something nice to Big Ed in the control room. Thank you, Ed, for everything. I appreciate it. And we will have a wonderful weekend. And saluted me. I saluted him because he is a wonderful guy. I'm really appreciative of everything that Big Ed does for me. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Read a good book. Read The Fractured Kingdom, or, well, anyway, find a book. Go to my website. What am I saying? www.radio-joyonpaper.com. You will find a lot of books there for you to read. Bye-bye now.